Well, hello everybody, and good morning, Beth.
Good morning, Beth.
I hope everybody is well this morning. Thank you for joining us. It is morning, obviously, when we're recording this. Might not be when you're listening, so thank you for watching and or listening to this. This is Between Two Beths, and our conversation today is going to be very similar to what we talked about earlier in the month, but it's called Give Yourself Credit, where resilience meets compassion. And before we chat, we're going to introduce ourselves. So, I am Beth Meek. I am a holistic nutrition and health coach turned champion for the midlife caregiver. After 2 seasons of caregiving myself, I decided there must be other women out there who aren't taking care of themselves, like just like I didn't find time or had the capacity to take care of myself. So I help women with digital products as well as coaching and things like that to help her first understand her worth in taking care of herself alongside of this additional role she's taken on, and help her understand the role of nutrition and boundaries and things like that in her in her role, and that self-care and caregiving are not mutually exclusive. So Beth, please introduce yourself. So good to see you this
Uh,
morning.
yeah, good to see you. Yes, I am Beth Y. And I am Beyond Life Coaching by Beth. I work with people in going through major changes in midlife, specializing in helping widowed people move from existing to fully living again. I am a certified life coach. I'm a certified transition specialist, master practitioner certified in energy assessments, and recently accredited with the International Coaching Federation at the ACC level. Um, I offer individual coaching products as well as group coaching. Um, I myself am a widow. I was widowed in November 2019. My husband passed away on my birthday. A couple months later, COVID hit. And then I was in near isolation for almost 2 years. And then in 2023, I realized that one, I wasn't happy. I wasn't living my life
Mm.
fully, and that my goals, values, priorities, everything had substantially changed. And so I left my career and I went back to school to become a coach. And now I help other people navigate that journey as well.
Nice. Nice. So needed. Thank you, Beth. So give yourself credit. Right, right. It evokes a smile. Like we've all been there, right? Women in general and caregivers, I know for sure, hold themselves to a higher standard than others. They set the bar higher for themselves than others. Things that we would never say to a fellow caregiver or our best friend who's caregiving, right? Or something like that. We say to ourselves, you haven't done enough. Why are you slacking? Or whatever. There's so much more to do. We expect so much more of ourselves than anyone else does, often, not always. Or than we expect of others. We just believe that we should just keep pushing through and things like that. Um, so caregivers do that, Beth. Do have you found that in yourself with widowhood and where the stages that you've gone through to get to where you are today?
Oh, absolutely. At first, um, at least for me, and I imagine for a lot of people, when you become, I'll call it going from a we to a me, right?
Yes.
Um, at first, you're just paralyzed by it all. And so I mean, it reshapes your identity. It really does. And so you start, trying to figure out, um, how do you carry what you went through, as do probably caregivers. It's about, it's emotionally, it's physically, it's
Yes.
spiritually,
Yes.
and, acknowledging what you carried, um, is a big part of that. I mean, what did you survive that no one fully saw? And
Yeah.
only you know that. So people see this version of you, but that's your external, and that's what you put out in the world, right?
Yeah.
But there's this internal piece of you, and many of us guard it.
Yeah.
And that's natural. That's human survival mode.
Yeah.
But when you step back and you assess that, I mean, you're a survivor,
Yes.
right? What did you survive that no one else really fully saw?
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that, Beth?
That's huge. That is taking it from the practical, the physical, the making the meal, the doing the laundry to the emotional, the to the dealing with the strain and the stress and the grief and the guilt and the anticipatory grief in the world of the caregiver, right? Those stages that as you watch your loved one's health decline and things like that, all of those outward things that are happening physically are taking their toll emotionally and mentally as well. And the acknowledgement, like you said, is so important, giving yourself credit for what you're dealing with and what you're handling and things like that. And yeah, I think that's really, really powerful. The thing that I was thinking along those lines is that we're always we're not focusing on what we have accomplished or have gone through. We're always focusing on the next step. We're focusing on that there's always something more to do or to accomplish, whether it's in the mundane, whether it's changing the bed sheets or making a meal, to the when's the next shoe gonna drop, right? When's the next thing gonna happen in my mom's life that she's not gonna be able to handle that I'm gonna have to take on? So it's that. There's always something more, right? So I can't give myself credit for what I've already done because there's always something more. It's like that we're waiting for it to be complete as opposed to that, yeah, your life is complete today. When you finish it, give yourself credit for what you handled today.
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes when we're in the throes of that,
Yeah.
um, we're in the midst of grief or anticipatory grief,
Hmm.
um, and exhaustion. And
Yes,
that is not a weakness, it's a depletion,
that's right.
right? And I think, one of the tools that we can use and keep in our arsenal is to ask ourselves or tell ourselves, instead of saying, I should be stronger, try, I've already been strong. Reflect
Yes,
back, and then you can take those morsels and those nuggets of the past and bring them forward, into the future, into the next step.
absolutely.
Because as I said earlier, when you're in survival mode, and I mean, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally,
Yeah,
it's just exhausting. So
yes,
this is really where you go back and say, where have I been strong? Where do I
yes.
take that nugget? Where do I become my own champion and give myself credit?
Yeah, that's huge. Being your own champion, not needing external somebody, whether it's a relative or a friend saying you're doing a good job or you did a good job or you're doing enough. Because a lot of those external voices aren't going to support that. They're not going to buoy you. Some might, but I think when you're in the situation as we've been in, we expect more of that buoying from other people. And they just don't for whatever reason, and we're not here for that. So we have to be our own champion. We have to be our own internal spokesperson, right? We have to have those thoughts on our own. And you said something, you were talking about survival and exhaustion and things like that. And for the caregiver, the most common thing I see is burnout,
Yes.
right? And so when we give ourselves credit we actually can start, I don't want to say eliminating, but reducing burnout. Because when you're giving yourself credit, if you think about it, you give yourself credit and you say, good job. You just did a lot today. So sit down and take 10 minutes for yourself rather than I didn't do enough. I've got to do this and this is waiting for me and so I can't sit down. So that's the perpetuating this cycle of burnout. But when we give ourselves credit, we allow for some self-care. We allow for us to sit back and say, how can I take care of myself now? And in widowhood, I'm expecting it's very similar when you're feeling like you can't take care of yourself. When you give yourself credit for having had strength, for what you've come through, then it's almost permission. It's almost allowing yourself to say, now, what do I need moving forward? What do you think about that, Beth?
Absolutely. So, in life coaching, uh, we have two categories of energy. And I said at the top of the session that, I was a master practitioner certified in energy assessments. Um, and so there's catabolic energy, and that's tearing down destructive energy. And then there's anabolic energy, and that is lifting up, empowering energy. And I think it's important too, you say give yourself credit, um, release your inner critic as well, right? So we all have those situations. Um, and, you know, you've heard the phrase, hindsight is 2020. So when you think about that phrase, what is that really telling you? It's telling you to a certain degree that you probably have more information now than you did then, right?
Yes.
You're in a different frame of mind than you were then.
Yeah.
And so, I think what's really important when your inner critic comes out, and I mean, and this is where give yourself credit, all right? I mean, place your hand on your heart and say, I did best I could with what I had.
Yeah.
And another thing that we use in coaching, we call them gremlins, right? Very technical term,
Yeah.
but these are when your inner voice is kind of doing negative self talk on you.
Yeah.
And one of the tricks that we do is we give the gremlin a name, preferably not some after somebody you know,
Yeah.
but just give it a name. And when that voice starts, just frankly, just tell it to shut up, go away. You
Yeah.
don't belong in my life.
Yeah.
And it's very subtle and seems kind of silly, but give it a try. You might be surprised.
Yeah.
But anyway, as we move forward and we start giving ourselves credit, I would probably say, there's a couple of questions you can ask yourself, empowering questions. Um, when you're going through these seasons, it's like, what parts of me were postponed, right? Because we
Mm.
did. We paused. You put your life on hold.
Yes.
And that length can vary from person to person, and that's perfectly acceptable. But then ask yourself, who am I becoming now? So,
Yes.
Beth, thoughts?
I think that's amazing because in caregiving, I remember one of the, well, I really want to talk about the gremlins too, but I'll come back to that. One of the things I had the most difficult time with was that thought of losing myself. And I know for other caregivers that's so true as well. So to be able to, even in the midst of caregiving, say, what have I postponed? And maybe in caregiving and the journey of widowhood too, maybe there are things, even as you're caregiving, as you're in that season still, you can bring parts back that you postponed before the end, before your caregiving season is over, for, in whatever way that looks like, because your situation is always changing and always evolving, right? My mom went from, excuse me, being at home in her house where I lived with her at the time because I was from out of town to moving into a facility. So possibly when a big change happens like that, and in a caregiver's life, that is a huge change, even though the caregiving stays, it just changes, the caregiving changes. But something you postponed might be able to be brought back in because of more time or because you're not living with your loved one or whatever that looks like. So I love that. I love that question. What have you postponed and what might it look like and when are you looking to bring some of that back in or to keep some of that, right? Because we've got to, and that's one of my goals is to help women not postpone their life, not say, where did my life go? We can't we can't lose ourselves and our health in the season of caregiving because we will be the ones who need care then afterwards and or our loved one won't get the care they need during the season. So that really hit home. And the gremlins, I love that. And I love that you give them a name and shut up. I also think where you have shared the word reframing, that also comes in here because I think sometimes when we have a thought, gremlin or not, that is kind of like you should be doing more or you should be able to handle more, whatever that is, we need to replace that with something
Yeah.
positive because we need to understand that we need to do more or we could be doing more isn't necessarily true. But the true statement actually is, I am doing the best I can today with what I've got, which you said. And I think when we say those statements that are more based in truth, even if it's,
Yeah.
I still have the bed to make and I still have laundry to do, but I have done enough for today, or I have done as much as I can today. That is more based in truth than you didn't do enough, right?
Yes.
So, how do you feel about something like that?
Yeah. I love that saying that, this is enough for today.
Yeah.
We're always putting pressure on ourselves. And so it kind of goes back to um, you've heard me say this before. Journaling is a great tool when we're going through these seasons. Um, and even if you don't journal, there are some questions you can ask yourself and
Yeah.
put into practice. Um, ask yourself, recognize what are, say, three things that I have handled that were harder than anyone realized.
Yeah.
Um, one strength, caregiving or grieving, developed in me.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we're giving ourselves credit.
Yeah.
Um, one way grief or caregiving has softened me. You
Yes.
know, I can't remember if I said it at the beginning of this episode, but I've said it many times over. I believe that, I have become a better and more compassionate person.
Yeah.
Um, and that was hard for me to accept
Okay.
and embrace because I felt guilty. I felt like I became a better person at the expense of.
Ah, yes.
Um, and then a boundary when you were talking about, I am done for today.
Yes.
It absolutely give yourself, boundaries are put in place to protect ourselves,
Yes.
not to ward off people, but to protect our peace, right? So, what is it you need to put in place? And it's okay, guilt free.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about, I said about the 2020 hindsight. Um, one thing I can relieve myself of carrying forward, or two,
Yes. Yes.
but what do I no longer have to carry forward and hold space for?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, with that, um, I would say that, giving yourself grace, and I'll say this in closing, um, is honoring where you were,
Yeah.
but also redefining your strengths.
Yeah. Oh, that's
So
good.
with that, I'll hand it over to you and you can wrap it up.
Well, that's really good. Thank you for those questions too. They're really, really helpful and thought-provoking. And I think the only thing I would challenge anybody listening today would be to say, Beth and I have given quite a few different areas and ways of seeing what you really are dealing with and how ways you can give yourself credit. And what I would say is, what is one way that you're going to start giving yourself more credit, whether it's seeing where you've come from, what strength you've developed, or setting that boundary, and I have done enough for today, whatever. But I would challenge everybody watching and listening to decide that they're going to find that way to give themselves the credit that they do deserve for where they are, where they've come from, and where they are headed. So, with that, I think we will say goodbye. And Beth, it was great having this chat again with you. And thank you everyone for watching. We would welcome feedback, subject, topics, and remember, as Beth usually says, coaching is much different than therapy. We are coaches and we are here to just have everyday conversations that we hope are helpful for caregivers and widows who are looking to live again. And so with that, we will say goodbye. Bye, Beth. Bye,
Everybody, till
everyone.
next time.